that I have no clue where I am. Not a snowflakes. Hello everyone and welcome to Zach's Garage. Today I am running you through some of the great and the bad things about the McLaren Artura. Artura roughly translating to Duracell in Swedish. Now before we get into the proper review of this car, I want to say a massive shout out and a big thank you to McLaren Boston. In true New York style, these guys said, listen, there's the key, go talk about it, share the love, and I'm sitting here with a Papaya Spark McLaren Artura from people that don't know me from that bush. So let's get into it, and yeah, I'm going to show you some bits that I like and some bits I don't like. Now if you'll ignore the whole Duracell Swedish joke, this car is actually quite surprising. So it's the latest and greatest from McLaren Automotive, based down in Surrey in Woking, and actually I'm growing to rather like it. Now, Papaya Spark Orange is a bit of a bold colour, but mix it with enough carbon and enough of their black plastic, and actually, it's quite a good looking thing. Featuring their new V6 twin-turbo engine, with actually a surprisingly zesty output. So the Artura then, it's taken a lot of styling cues from lots of different cars. Now instantly the front end screams a little bit of McLaren GT, but then using the sort of McLaren logo in the headlights, you can also see a little bit of Speedtail. But we'll move on from that. You've got the square McLaren badge rather than the sort of oval. I actually quite like that, I think it looks a little bit smarter. Then we come round to the side, we're greeted by some 765 LT. We've got twin instead of triple canards, which are quite cool. We've got these actually quite subtle, if not too subtle, 19-inch McLaren rims. Then moving back, we've got this, which is all new, and obviously they've had to get more cooling for the hybrid batteries, so they had to get quite clever with the aerodynamics, and it gets even cleverer when we get back. I know what you're thinking. That wasn't English. I'm fully aware, I'm just not going to refilm the clip, you get what I'm saying. So on the right hand side of the car then, you have the petrol filler cap, and on the left you have the plug-in hybrid, but we'll get to that in just 2 secs. Now, because this is a hybrid, cooling is a massive thing. McLaren had to spend a lot of R&D money on working out how to keep this car as cool as possible, because you've got to remember, there's days where this car's going to be driving around Texas in 120 degree heat, and it's got to be able to survive. It's got to be able to have air conditioning that works, and it's got to keep running. So they've done certain things, like this grille is so clearly as empty as possible to let as much airflow through. They've got this rather cool top-mounted exhaust, which I'm pretty sure is good for heat displacement and also aerodynamics. They've got, in true McLaren style, the exhaust mounted on the top rather than lower down, and lights that are fairly well hidden into the grille, which all makes for a rather aggressive look. On the left-hand side then, one press, and you have the plug-in hybrid part. Now, I'm not 100% sure in terms of charging, but what I do know is it's a 7 kilowatt or 7.6 kilowatt battery, which obviously ties in with the V6 twin-turbo engine. You're stepping inside the Artura then, and you are greeted by a very high opening door. There's pros and cons to that, but it makes it very easy to get in. Stepping in the Artura then, you're instantly greeted with a very, very familiar cabin. You're greeted by the typical McLaren steering wheel, but this year they're featuring more with aluminium, so you have these aluminium inserts, these really, really nice feeling aluminium shift paddles, and then these rocker switches up here, which are actually genius, but we're going to get into that in just 2 secs. Upon getting in the McLaren Artura, you're instantly greeted with two of the important things. You have 5 miles of range for battery, 195 miles for petrol, and the 12-volt battery is 100% charged. Now that's very crucial for supercar owners. You'll know about it. For the people who aren't supercar owners, you will now learn that if your 12-volt battery gets too low, especially in a hybrid car, it can be devastating. So that is just as important, if not important, than those. Now inside you are greeted with the typical McLaren infotainment system. They still have the rather cool VDC that you have to like press and hold that and then faff around with this and switch the car on, but you guys know that variable drift control. Trying to get back to the homepage though is it's a touch confusing because Oh. There you go, you guys just saw me work it out. Driving positions, media, blah, 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 blah. You've got my phone, street name, not found, because we're in America and I don't know where the car is, neither does the car. Ambient lighting. Now, this is cool. Now, ambient lighting is quite a new feature to McLaren. They've actually done it that goes all the way around this door panel here. Rather lovely. Now, you can change the colours, you can select whatever colour you want. Quite nice, but I will admit there's not really much point during the day because it's such a thin line you can only barely see it. But on the flip side of that, I must admit I thought this was ambient lighting. This is stitching, so I may have been fiddling around with it thinking it wasn't working.
That's what she said.
No, you do not join me in a toaster or a kettle. You join me in the all-new McLaren Artura. Now, this thing is hybrid. This is something quite controversial because we all know McLaren's history with things like hybrids. But if I double press these buttons here, this thing becomes far from a normal hybrid. So, the Artura then, McLaren's first affordable hybrid, and what's it honestly like? Well, you can quite clearly tell that this hybrid technology effectively fills in for turbo lag, because I would recommend calling this zesty, because McLaren aren't saying this is meant to be quicker than a 720. I mean, they'd be silly to say so. It's not. But what it is it has a sort of romantic feeling about it that gives you that old school MX-5 feel. That I know that sounds crazy to relate a £250,000 supercar as an MX-5, but it's about miles per gallon, and as soon as you involve a big battery such as a hybrid or electronics, you start taking away from the enjoyment. Well, that was before Artura. V6 hybrid twin turbo. Interesting combination. V6 is a risky one, considering that it can make a car very zesty, but it can lack soul. I haven't experienced that in the Artura. I must be honest, this car feels remarkably tame. That's not necessarily a good thing. And now I say that because sometimes you want to feel like you're going to get in trouble. And I'm currently driving this in electric mode with 5 miles extra range because it's pretty depleted at the moment. And it feels like, I don't know, like an S-Class or a 7 Series. But then on the flip side, this isn't pretending to be a P1. It's not pretending to be a 620R. This is telling everyone, actually, McLaren are doing their own thing. This is our plug-in hybrid. Check it out. And it's a zesty car. Zesty as in, like, it doesn't necessarily have to have crazy 0 to 60 time. In fact, I think it's in the mid-3s, the 0 to 60 time in this, which isn't bad, but there are other cars faster for the same money. As I said, it's not all about the speed and statistics. It's about driver emotion. And actually, this feels a lot more responsive than other McLarens I've driven. It's, as I said, this is not trying to compete with something like a 600 LT. It's a different type of car. But the first thing that I noticed that I actually really like about this is the simplicity. McLaren have got simplicity down on these to an absolute T. I mean, and when I say that, I mean the driver controls. The one thing that always bugged me on McLaren is you always have to look down here and fiddle and try and work out where the hell any of the switches were. Now, you can lift your fingers up from the steering wheel, tap a couple of buttons, change drive modes for the gearbox, the engine, etc, etc. So that was a clever move by McLaren, I must admit. I do miss the rotating screen. I thought that was a really cool feature, and also when having spirited driving, it certainly helps being less distracting. So, pros and cons then. Pros. She feels alive. She feels very, very responsive. It's got that new McLaren lightweight carbon technology in the thing, so it makes it even lighter. That makes it feel very nimble, very on its feet, which is quite a nice feeling, especially considering it's probably quite heavy being a hybrid. A con from that, as much as it is light, I feel like it lacks a little bit of feel when you're starting to get on the power. I feel that the four-wheel drive system can and does semi-step in a little bit, so that when you start to get on the power, it starts grabbing a little bit, which can be a little bit disconcerting, but you learn around these things. More things that I do like. I like their McLaren, like the infotainment system. I've always liked it. I always thought that a lot of companies should take a note from McLaren's book, because they've got the simplicity down, and infotainment can get very old very quickly, but you keep it in black and white, keep it looking clean, and it should age pretty well. One thing I have noticed about Artura though, because obviously there's so many electronical gizmos and gadgets going on, it makes weird bleeps at you, and by the time it bleeps at you, you look down to see what it bleeped at you about, and the message is gone. So I have no clue why it keeps beeping at me. I've got my seatbelt on. Pass. I don't know. What is quite nice though about the Artura is the level of torque. I'm in 5th gear and it still pulls, but very, very, very linear. It's not, you know, sluggish, because I think the hybrid system will keep it from being sluggish. It's not tear your face off fast, but it revs nice, and she picks up really well, really well. Now, unfortunately, as this is my first road test in America, I haven't got a clue where I'm going, haven't got a clue where I am, and I haven't got a clue how to get back to where this car belongs. So this is a review, but it's also like a side quest. So yeah, but there's some cool houses, and we're in Hartford at the moment, so pass. I don't really know. I know what hotel I'm staying at though, so maybe I'll take this to the airport. In true McLaren form, we won't talk about any faults, but there has been one little fault: the fuel gauge. I was very confused as to why, when I put 30 bucks in it, and yeah, we're in America, I can say bucks. When I put 30 bucks in it, it was coming out with 50 miles. It didn't really make too much sense to me, but it's now saying 215 miles. Now this car was pretty empty. I just put $30 in, and now it's showing me 215 miles. Now that, McLaren, is impressive, considering that we are averaging 13.2 miles per gallon since I filled up. Actually, this car is quite impressive. Another thing that I've realised is that this gearbox, it changes so much depending on what mode you're in. Now, I've driven it in electric, comfort, sport and track, and I've just realised that actually I think you just drive it in track everywhere, because you don't want to pull a paddle and wait. You kind of want to pull a paddle for it to happen, and it only really does that in track mode. But then there's something a bit perverse about driving around Hartford, Connecticut in track mode. Now I have accidentally stumped. Why are you bleeping at me? Ah, okay, I found out a speed limit. I have actually found myself on a rather bumpy road, and actually I do have one fault with it. It's a little bit harsh, which is not something I thought that this car would be, but actually the rebound on it is quite aggressive. So I apologise if you guys thought this was going to be a road review. This is you guys trying to help me get unlost from wherever the hell I am. I'm recognising certain places, but we're now on the motorway. The thing keeps bleating at me saying it's 30 miles an hour, and well, I mean, it could be. America, your roads and your systems for driving baffle me. Makes no sense. Stop signs, whole 9 yards. Just don't get it. And I know everyone's already hating and screaming bald eagles, but yeah, come to England. It's stressful in England, but it's stressful because it makes sense. It's not stressful because you've got no clue what's going on half the time. Dear America, please, for the love of God, stop doing this thing with phone signal, which means that no one other than a US citizen gets phone signal. Because I've been lost 4 times this trip, 4 times. unnecessary. I'm having to use a goddamn paper book, and now my phone's frozen, so I'm now in the middle of absolutely nowhere with no clue how to get where. So, dear McLaren, when you guys are watching this, I apologise. I know you wanted your car back, but I have no clue where I am. Not a snowflakes. I think I paid extra to Vodafone so that I could get signal out here, and I still can't. I have to knock on random, and this is not a joke, I had to knock on a random old lady's house door to connect to her Wi-Fi, because last night I was lost for 45 minutes. Now that may not seem a lot. The shop I was trying to get to was 4 minutes away. Now, is it me being stupid? A percentage of that I will admit. But I rely on phones. Who doesn't? These things, like, you can't live without them and you can't live with them. So, and now it's just decided I need to go that way. I'm in the third lane. Well, that's just not going to happen, is it? The funny thing is, you guys know how this video is going before I do, because I'm currently driving this car, trying to find a location where I can pull over and get some really nice walking around it shots, but I don't know where I am. I'm lost. So if you guys are seeing this video really poor quality and unedited, well, you will be anyway, but it means I'm lost, so please come find me. I'm somewhere in Farmington, and I don't even know where that is. I know that's where the show is, but killer, absolutely killer. Oh, I can't wait to get back into England. Stop beeping at me.